Welcome back to our Peace Through Strength podcast, brought to you by the American Security Council Foundation. I'm your host, Joy Votrobek, and with me today is our senior analyst, Laurence Sanford. Welcome back, Larry.
Good day, Joy.
Thank you, Larry, for your paper on reciprocity. A lot of good points you had on China and reciprocity, but I think one that many of our listeners might not be as familiar with, some of them, yes, but the de minimis. And I have found this interesting myself. Can you explain what de minimis is and how it is hurting the U.S.?
Matter of fact, in today's paper, there was an article about Joe Biden saying we have to do something about de minimis. He didn't use the term de minimis, but he talked about correcting the tariffs because de minimis means of little value. And the customs, when you come into the country as a tourist, and let's say you bought $500 worth of jewelry in the Virgin Islands. Well, the Virgin Islands, America. If you bought them in Qatar, overseas, you're coming into the country, customs will inspect what you bring in. You have to declare it. If it's under $800, there's no tax, there's no hassle. You're free to go. So that's de minimis. It's of little value. Now, in China, communist China, the de minimis is $7. In other words, if anything is of value more than $7, then you have to declare it. You have to be taxed on it. You have to possibly be inspected. And so what the Chinese have done, and you have to take your hat off to them, boy, they grab every opening that's out there. Mm-hmm. They've taken the American de minimis of $800 per item and loaded up containers worth, plane loads worth of stuff and shipped them to the United States, each one packaged individually under $800. So fentanyl's coming in, cheap clothing's coming into the sheen. Well, who knows? Because right now, 1 billion packages a year. That's 3 million packages a day are coming into the United States, duty-free, not inspected, and no one going who knows where, containing who knows what. And we're allowing them to get away with it. And of course, de minimis in clothing, Shein, for example, the SHEIN online clothing store, which sells unbelievably cheap clothing made with slave labor, filled with toxic chemicals in the print inks, is coming in and disrupting the clothing industry in the United States, the distribution industry in the United States. It's just, we should just change de minimis to reciprocity. If China's $7, we should have $7 for anything coming in from Asia or China or whatever, because China's developing techniques now where stuff made in China, they ship it to Singapore, they ship it to Vietnam.
Right.
So
Thailand, or, yeah.
We have to be a little smarter and say China or origins. Anything under $8 is going to be inspected or has the potential to be inspected, because fentanyl's coming in that way. It's coming in through the cartels.
I was going to say, and Shein may not be as much of an issue for some people because it's clothing. To me, clothing that are that cheap, I always question. But certainly the fentanyl issue is a big problem, and it concerns everyone in every state, county, here where we live. So that is something that needs to be watched.
But we have, to solve a problem, you have to identify the problem. Again, getting back to today's paper, the local paper, talking about Biden wants to crack down on fentanyl and so forth. Nowhere is it mentioned that fentanyl's precursor chemicals are made in China. Nowhere in the article is it made that the Mexicans manufactured with Chinese support and ship it up through Chinese manufacturing techniques and machine. Oh, the article had the audacity to say, well, the United States government is working with Mexico and China to curtail fentanyl. I mean, the authors of that article should be banned from writing articles because they don't know what they're talking about and they're flat out of line. Mexico and China are putting face on it, but both Mexico and China are major sources, major sources of fentanyl.
Maybe we should write to them, Larry.
Yeah. In my old days, when I was a private citizen, not involved in American security, I used to write letters to like that. I never got responses either.
I wonder why. Now, switching gears to Russia. I read here your one point. You had, again, numerous good points on this. But lift U.S. government restrictions on the export of natural gas to benefit allies and reduce Russian income from the sales of gas or to foreign entities. Sorry. And I have always thought that was a good idea. But more and more, I'm concerned that Russia would then turn around and sell to adversaries and BRIC countries.
They
So
already are.
so in light of that, do you think that our allies would benefit from the natural gas more than the BRIC countries?
I would think so. I mean, let's face it, Russian oil is being pumped to India, which is China. It's going everywhere. And oil is fungible. You stop it here, it's going to go somewhere. I'm not a big fan of boycotts and restrictions. I guess in some instances they're okay, but my feeling is we should just do it. That's part of Trump's campaign slogans, is to lower the cost of inflation and so forth. Is to unbound the American energy sector, but just lower energy prices, ship it overseas. And of course, the green climate energy kind of guys are all saying, no, we've got to get rid of fossil fuels. And they have yet to show anyone anywhere that getting rid of fossil fuels provides energy. Solar and wind are not going to cut it as far as providing solar energy on an industrial scale. On homes, okay, little bit backup. You still need backups. You still need fossil fuel, and even better, nuclear energy, because that's 24/7. It's expensive to build, but they have new technologies coming on. And I would only note, as far as nuclear energy, the United States Navy has been using nuclear energy to power their ships for 60 years. And I can't think of one incident in the 60 years where these nuclear powered ships have had a nuclear power problem.
Yeah, and I think France uses a lot of nuclear energy as well. And Germany, I think, is getting on board too. So
in Finland just opened up a huge nuclear plant, and it cut its electricity costs in half. And so now they're way below what Germany is paying for electricity. And German industry is suffering big time because their energy costs are so high they can't compete on a worldwide scale. It's a real problem with Germany.
Well, this administration, I'm not sure is going to go for that, but we'll have to see how things go here in the future.
Yes. Yeah.
So getting to our peace through strength solutions, since this paper is about reciprocity, and I did want to focus on Iran. Iran is trying to influence the university students and others in the US, as I spoke to about the paper, to support Hamas, and they're not condemning actions against the state of Israel that Hamas has caused, as you alluded to. So what can we do to reciprocate and let Iranians know that the US supports their efforts to return to a more secular society that they had previous to this Muslim theocracy?
Well, I mean, we certainly can try to control and limit the influx of money into the domestic organizations, but defense usually doesn't work. We have to stimulate strife within Iran. I'm not a big believer in military action, but there's a lot of gray zone activities. We can beef up the support of dissident groups within Iran and outside of Iran. There's millions of Iranians outside of Iran. Within Iran, 65% of the population is Persian, which means 35% of the population is not Persian. So you have the Azerbaijanis, you have the Arabs, you have the whole Patnbulskakis, and there's all sorts of Kurds too, for that matter. So there's all sorts of groups within Iran that don't like the Persian rule. And then within the entire population of approximately 90 million, 40% are not practicing Muslims. It's the most secular group of Muslims in the entire world because they're sick and tired of being ruled by tyrannical mullahs. And the American concept of separation of church and state is no better exemplified by what happens if you don't separate church and state than Iran, with these old mullahs preaching hate, death to Israel, death to America. What kind of religion preaches death to human beings? It's a terrible.
Yes, I thought that was interesting. I read that in your paper that only 40% of Iranians now identify as Muslims, as opposed to 80% 40 years ago.
Yeah. So we should do a lot of gray zone activities and just create as much stress with the ultimate goal. We should say the ultimate goal. Ronald Reagan's, right? We win, they lose. So we should be stressing. We want the mullahs out of there. We want a secular government. for the good of the people. And the people have to do it themselves. We're not going to send in the Marines. We've learned our lesson on that, I hope, in Afghanistan, Iraq, whatever, all the invasions of Vietnam. You can't change a culture.
No, if the people want it, they've got to do it.
That's precisely right.
I mean, hopefully with Afghanistan, Iraq, I'm not sure, but hopefully we've opened their eyes at least in 20 years to see what can be. And we'll just have, as you say, light one candle at a time.
Thank you, Joy. Yes, one candle at a time.
All right. Well, thank you, Larry, for your comments on your paper on reciprocity and on talking to me on Iran.
Well, thank you, Joy. Enjoyed it as always.
Thank you. And thank you to our listeners. Please subscribe, share, and comment on our YouTube and Rumble channels. You can also like and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And don't forget about Substack. And if you join the ASCF as a member, that includes a paid Substack subscription, which Larry writes articles on as well. So we hope that we will see you on Substack and that you will join us again next time for our Peace Through Strength podcast.